It's afternoon, so why don't we get started? Let's do introductions first, and let us start with, let's do the folks online first. Hopefully they can hear us.
Tony, public member.
Jody Birch, public member.
Liz Foote, public member.
Well, Liz, see Joe's name.
Joe Healy, public member.
Okay, that's everyone up there. All right, go around. Angie.
Oh, Angie Powers.
Whitney Hill, Deputy County Administrator.
Lee Randall, County Management.
Elizabeth Pate, County Internal Auditor.
Daryl Parrish, public member.
Nick Levi, County Administrator and ex officio member.
Steve Dennisman, County Clerk, elected member.
Spencer Eldevick, I'm an accountant up in finance.
Welcome, Spencer.
Jana Kane, Controller in Finance.
I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator, and I am no longer the interim Fair Next voter. Jeff Curtis started on Monday. We're happy to have him on.
And I'm a witness to Jeff Curtis starting on Monday. I'm Bill Coon, the Deschutes County Treasurer.
Okay. And then we've got someone in the back there too.
Hello, Bill. I'm nobody.
Nice to meet you. Okay, let's move on. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from the December 12th, 2025 meeting. Any suggestions, any additions, subtractions, comments, questions? If not, take a motion to approve. Motion to approve the agenda, the minutes from the December 10th, 2025 meeting, joint meeting. I'll make a motion to approve. Have a second? Second, Lee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing none, move on to the next item, which is internal audit reports. Elizabeth, that would be you.
So we have no reports completed this month. We have 2 reports in process. So still working on the houselessness audit. On that one, I'm currently I did a bunch of outreach with providers, and now I'm reaching out to other counties to get some ideas about how they run their programs. I'm also starting up the courthouse construction audit. That will kick off in 2 weeks, I think. So working on quickly on that one. And then there's just a link to the status report if you're interested in taking a look at that. That kind of shows how time was spent over the past 2 months.
Okay, any questions on ones that are currently being done? Any questions on the status report? All right, let's move on to special topics, and this is one of my favorites. Popular annual financial report. Jan?
The mouse, or I can pull it up on the screen.
Do you have?
You can Google Deschutes County Packer and share it.
Let me do it. This is the host. Let me do it on my computer. Hang on.
While she's getting that up, so I brought Spencer today because Spencer's the one who actually prepares the PAFR. And so he's one of my sidekicks on the ACFR. He helps us do like all the audit work papers, get everything together for the ACFR, and then turns around and really quickly has to put together the PAFR within a couple of weeks. And so I brought him here today. I'm hoping next year he can present it since it's really his report. But I'm happy to run through it with y'all. Oh, no, I'm gonna go through it. Yeah, I'm just waiting for her to get it on the screen.
Waiting for the.
I was waiting, okay.
I'll say more than that.
This is really,
I know, that's a fun one. I try not to get sad that more people look at the PAFR than the ACFR, because ACFR is so much work, but the bond agencies care about our act, so. Did you find it?
I found it. I'm
Trying to share it.
yeah. Like, why is this person not admitting me? Okay, I share my screen.
And I didn't put together slides because it's already a summary of a 300-page document, so I'm just gonna actually go over the document. That's okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's good, yeah. Okay, so our popular annual financial report, also referred to as the PAFR, this is for fiscal year 25 ending June 30th. So this is our plain language companion to the annual financial statements. And so today I just want to give you all the big picture of this report, highlight some things that are like recurring versus one time, and then I would love y'all's feedback too. I think it's always good to hear from you what members of the public want to see and what would make it easier for them to understand. This table of contents, you can flip to this, yeah. So we start the PAFR by highlighting a high-level snapshot of the county's overall position. So total assets, 725 million. This was an increase, a 10% increase over prior year. And then two drivers worth calling out for this report were capital assets increased by 19 million, primarily due to that county courthouse you all see going up. So this is an example of investing in long-term service delivery. And then the county's cash position increased by 21 million, which supports our liquidity and operational stability. On the liability side, so total liabilities, 392 million, a 1% increase. You'll notice some, I know it's really hard for y'all to see, so apologies. You'll notice that some categories improved while others increased. Unearned revenues decreased by 25 million. A lot of people consider this a favorable thing. For me, I'm thinking like, oh, this means that federal agencies and state agencies haven't committed funds for us in this moment. And so that's actually decreased. That's coming out of COVID and ARPA funding. And so now we don't have those huge influxes of cash. So just something to be wary of. Our OPEB liability increased by 13 million. Net pension liability increased by 18 million. I think y'all heard this over and over again that our post-employment benefits continue to be our biggest liability for the county. So just trying to display this to residents, like this is the financial picture we're in. Fiscal year 25 overall shows a strength in assets and liquidity while reinforcing the importance of monitoring and planning for our long-term benefit obligations. And sorry, we're still. So now stay on this page. So this page is one of the pages that's really important for like a resident understanding of available resources the county has. A lot of people think of net position as like spendable resources, and we're trying to showcase here of like, yes, our net position is 334 million. However, there are restricted portions of it, mainly our huge investment in capital assets, and trying to showcase of like really the unrestricted net position is what's available to spend, not these other categories. And so we're trying to put that in layman's terms so people can understand it. So yeah, hoping to communicate that our financial position is tied to capital assets and restricted purposes. So governance decisions should look beyond that single headline number of the 334 million. Any questions so far? No, I can get going fast sometimes. Okay, the next page, please. So I think of this page as telling these next two pages, the story of the county's performance for fiscal year 25. Our revenues and expenses. So fiscal year 25 revenues, 349 million. an increase of 14% over prior year. And then fiscal year 25 expenses, 285 million. This also, we tried to capture in this report that the county prioritized cost-conscious operations and efficiencies and savings across departments, resulting in expenditures only increasing by 1.6 million or 0.6%. And I think that's huge given personnel cost, just like the rising inflation. We do dive, if you like look at these tables up close, they're kind of outlined to residents, like what are our key revenue sources, property taxes, transient lodging taxes. That name change didn't happen until fiscal year 26, so we'll make sure that gets updated on next year's PAFR, but it was room tax technically for fiscal year 25. And then grants and contributions, investment earnings, and then I should bring that. Oh, charges for services. And so I think it tells a story of where we're getting our revenue from. On the expense side, do you want to zoom in a little, Angie, on the expenses for me? Scroll down. Sorry. You didn't know you were going to run this, I'm sorry. Yeah, so again, bringing it back to the public of like, where are these dollars going by major service area? So you can see health and welfare representing 27%, county roads 13%, public safety 36%. We do talk a little bit of why these changes fluctuated from year to year. Overall, I hope y'all find it helpful. I know that we spend a lot of time making sure that the explanations make sense and that they're really in like a general format that anybody could understand. So again, fiscal year 25, a strong year. Revenues rose sharply while spending was tightly managed. One thing to keep in mind is how much of that revenue growth is structural versus grant/capital timing, and how we continue planning for long-term people cost and benefit cost. As I talked about, we had some major grants that we spent a lot of funds on. And so that inflated revenues for that, not inflated. We showcased a strong revenue year, but it was mainly due to capital and grants. Okay, so a lot of people, including our commissioners, usually like our trend reporting. So this is your longer term lens of, sorry, I lost my place. This is helpful for residents and government's bodies to see the swings from year to year, especially with our different projects we have going on. So I would, when you're looking at these pages, like, are we seeing big swings in volatility? Are expense drivers trending upwards? Are we relying on one-time service or one-time sources to support ongoing service expectations? I think that our leadership does a really good job of not allowing us to commit a bunch of funding to one-time funding to ongoing service expectations. I know I've heard that conversation a lot in budget planning. So I think we do a great job. This would showcase if we were in trouble with that. So on to debt. Not a whole lot to say on debt. Spencer put some cool pictures of the courthouse in here. We did not get new debt in fiscal year 25, so the change in debt was just us making our annual payments. A lot of people love this page a lot. It's definitely like a plain language, show our residents where our money goes. So it explains that while Deschutes County is the tax collector, overall only 17 cents on each dollar paid in taxes is retained by the county. 83 cents is passed through to other government agencies. As you can see up there, Ben Parks and Rec, City of Bend, City of Redmond, many other service districts. So I think this is a key education point that helps residents understand what the county controls versus what we distribute. 9. Property taxes. This is where we try to put it as simple as possible. This is how your property taxes work. And then give them a trend of where tax rates have been and the assessed value. We move on to demographics and staffing. So this tells us how much our population's grown, what like an average resident looks like, the unemployment rate. And I actually like this the last chart on here, because it's showing population per FTE. And so I like to think it tells the story of growing pains in the county, because you see that where it goes up in 2019 of basically like we had a big demand for services because the population grew, but we didn't increase our FTE yet. And then us coming back down is leadership responding and saying we need more resources for the county to stay at the same service levels. And so I think I like the story it tells of like, we had this big population spike and then this is how we.
Where the line peaks at 2019, did that have something to do with COVID or was it?
Yes, I don't know.
I figured there was a correlation there.
I don't know. I think it might have more to do with us moving to ERP system and gaining some efficiencies and thinking we could like let staff and then realizing like. So I think you had a combination happening at the same time. So we went to Tyler 2018, 2019. And so we were gaining a bunch of efficiencies and then you turned around and you had COVID also like slam us. And so I think that spike might actually be us moving to an ERP system. But I wasn't here, so maybe other people can speak to it. This is just me, like my context of what I think happened. Oh yeah, so this can be helpful in explaining demand for workforce planning, why we have cost pressures and service expectations. I'm gonna just managing deliberately, but I think it's good to show residents that like we haven't had huge spikes and the county hasn't necessarily grown at the same rate as the population. And so we are doing more with less. So yeah. So now that's a wrap on the PAFR. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. I just want to say, Janet and Spencer, this is just fabulous work. I mean, you do such an extraordinary job every year. I really like how you captured several things, that it tells stories, and it really does. In the graphs, you can see that, and it's in the clarity and simplicity, but it's so informative at the same time. I think it does show two things that you said throughout. I mean, the stability of the organization. I mean, there's a couple graphs here and there that show the anomaly, like we just spoke about. And then you've mentioned, and I certainly appreciated it, but the efficiencies and the cost effectiveness and how important that is to the services we provide, that I think our residents and visitors are really getting an extraordinary value for what we're providing. But I just want to say thank you. Just such a great job, and you really deserve a lot of credit for this. Thank you.
I really like page 7.
That's a favorite.
It really simplifies where the money goes. A lot of people I don't think have any idea where property taxes go. Like checking it, assume maybe the county gets it all. That's who the check's written to, right? So this really explains that in a very simplified, easy to understand way. It should be on every tabletop.
Yeah,
GFOA would like that.
I agree. Every tabletop, and you could swap out the Ben for the red sisters for the pie.
That's right.
That would be cool too. Yeah, like by area. Oh, that's a good idea, actually. Actually have like multiple versions.
Yeah, we've been talking about ways to incorporate other areas because that one is based on a property tax bill in the city of Bend.
Yeah.
And so that breakout will be a little bit different for people in other areas of the county.
And then another thing that I'm excited to incorporate is Whitney and Cam worked on doing it for transient lodging taxes, like where that money goes. And so I know Cam put together one for budget this year. And so we're going to see if we can incorporate that into the PAFR. Because that's another huge revenue source that I think people would appreciate seeing where the dollars go.
Kristen Tony has her hand raised.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do love your ACFR. I'm one of the few that probably do read it. But I love that you guys do the PAFR. I mean, you have to have a financial statement audit and you have to have a budget, but this is something that you don't have to do. It's not required, but it's a way for you to communicate with your citizens. It's just really awesome that your team has taken this on, especially like right after such a heavy lift of the ACFR. So I really appreciate it. And I think you've found the right balance between words and pictures, because most people read, they run when they read and they go through really fast. So those pictures really tell a story. So just good job and thank you for doing it.
And Liz, yeah, go ahead, Liz. I can't see me. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Liz, go ahead.
Hi, just real quick, I think this is great. It's a lot of great information. My question is, how are you, and I might have missed it early on when you were speaking, how do you get this to the average person? Is it something that just we put up on the web page? How does the average person get this information? Because I think there's a lot of information here that's very valuable.
Do you want to speak to it or you want?
Sure. We do a press release after it's issued each year. And then we also mail physical copies to all the chambers of commerce throughout the county, as well as to the library system. So those are the primary ways.
And then we put some downstairs, just on the table out here. Yep.
I just delivered one about an hour ago to a lunch date that I had and knew that they would be interested in this report. There you go.
Yeah, this is great information. And I liked the idea of substituting maybe Sisters or Redmond in there. You know, because I see a lot of times in Sisters particularly, they're asking, you know, where are our tax dollars going? And, you know, I'm paying this amount of money in my property taxes, but I don't know where it's going. So maybe consider substituting, you know, Sisters, Redmond, some of the, you know, smaller towns, and get that information. I think it would be invaluable, quite honestly. So thank you. It's a great report.
It is anything from anyone else?
No, Jody.
Oh, Jody, okay.
Yes, thank you. Great job. I also really appreciate this. It's, you know, so much easier to kind of look at in a handful of pages as opposed to hundreds. But while we're also on the topic of, you know, improvements and stuff, something that I kind of notice it's in some of the charts, it might be kind of nice to have, you know, what's the county's targeted line, right? Like what is our kind of goal of FTE per citizen or things? So it also helps the user see this went up and it went down. Is that a good thing it went down? Is that a bad thing that chart went down, right? Few more of those kind of comparables of what is an average, you know, what is our debt ratio that we're looking at of the per capita debt, and further help where data is available. And just that's a suggestion.
Okay. I see no more hands up on the Zoomers. Anything else before we move on to the next item? All right, Jana, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item, 2025 global report and presentation, and that would be Elizabeth.
So we also did our annual report. It's not as pretty as Jana's. But every year we put out a report just summarizing recommendation status. And then 2 years ago, we started adding some performance measures from our office as well, to add a little bit more context. So these are sort of like the big numbers, and this is looking back 4 years. So including 4 years of reporting is kind of the universe that we report on. 37 reports issued, 210 recommendations. 129 of those were resolved within those 4 years. 77 remain unresolved, leading to a 66% 4-year resolution rate for recommendations. One of the things we report on is our reader satisfaction. So this is based on those reader surveys that are attached to all of our reports. We are exceeding both historic and target levels in reader satisfaction with 93% satisfaction. This is showing audit duration. So how many months does it take to complete an audit in each year? Our historic average is 6.2 months. We were a bit above that in 2025 at 6.9 months. I think that's due to some of the challenges we had in getting data and a lot of conversations about that, which made those audits take longer. This is our 4-year resolution rates. So this is looking at all of the recommendations that we've issued in the past 4 years and how many of those have been implemented within that time. We have a historic resolution rate of 91% and a target of 75%. We've been pretty consistently under that target since 2022. I think one of the reasons is that when David, before Aaron came on, would just ask departments what, have you implemented them? And if they said yes, he just checked off that it was implemented. When he hired Aaron, that process became a bit more robust. So we were actually doing some follow-up with departments to make sure they were actually implementing when they said they were implementing. So I think that's part of why that resolution rate has gone down. And I'm not sure the historic rates are really reliable. But also that benchmark 75% is sort of a nationwide standard for what we would consider a successful performance audit resolution rate within 4 years. And so I think we need to do some work to get that up. The resolution rate doesn't include some audits that are still some recommendations that are outstanding that are beyond that 4 years. So we have recommendations that are so old they're not even in our resolution rate. So those include one from human resources cash handling audit, 3 from the cellular cost audit, 2 from purchasing card audit, 2 from the clerk's office transition audit, and 1 for the munis purchasing audit. This chart shows what recommendations were implemented over 2025. So this includes all outstanding recommendations in 2025 that had not either been issued or followed up on in that year. So these are all at least 2 years old. And so, for example, human resources had 11 outstanding recommendations. None of those were resolved within the year. Administration had 8 total recommendations, 1 of which was resolved during the year. So finance had 6, 3 remained in process, 3 were resolved. That's how to read that chart. Kudos to the sheriff's office, which got all of their recommendations implemented. This shows the average time it has taken for departments to resolve recommendations. So the countywide average is 1.3 years. Maybe some of the reasons the sheriff's office is higher at 3.5 is that they got all of their recommendations resolved. One thing this doesn't show is the time of recommendations that have not been resolved and are still in process. And so I think the next chart kind of shows that, and you can see finance is the highest. Their average age of in-process recommendations is 4 years. So once they have implemented those recommendations, then this, where it's 1.2, that will go up a lot as they start implementing those recommendations. So these two kind of need to be seen together. And just some other data that's included in the report was our adherence to work schedule. So that's showing how many other new projects, unpredicted projects we initiated during a year. That kind of shows how good of a job we're doing at planning. Department and office coverage. So we're looking at how long has it been since we've seen each department, which ones haven't. Are we meeting our goals for touching departments in a timely manner? Our office's staffing ratio. And then also the report includes just an overall summary of the status of all of the recommendations. And that's it for that report.
Okay.
The presentation just reminded me, I saw the clerk's office transition in 2021, and I know there was a treasurer's transition and a sheriff's office transition. And for the first time, and I don't know how many, 27 years, we have an assessor
Yeah.
transition. So will that be something that you initially?
Yep, so
This year,
that-
I know that's not this report, but all of a sudden it just triggered that.
Yep. So towards the end of the year, I'll bring it up to the audit committee to add that to the audit schedule, and I'll reach out to Scott later in the year, and we sort of bridge the transition there.
I was just curious. It's just great. Thank you.
Anything else? So the 75% target, that's like a national.
Yeah, I think
What-
the GAO sort of establishes that, and then sort of standard amongst audit shops as well.
So there's a built-in 25%.
That some things are gonna take longer than 4 years, or are cases where management's gonna accept risk.
And then just the other thing I would like to say is when we go through the individual reports, we kind of read about the work that's being done to resolve the audit. So we kind of get more detailed information with each.
When we do the follow-up.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just all of it put together in one.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Worked a lot of years. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item then. System of quality review.
So every year, we are required to do a review of our quality assurance process and report to you on how we're doing with that. So in 2025 or in 2024, the GAO adopted new auditing standards that changed the approach to risk from what used to be quality assurance to now quality management. And the biggest change of this was, rather than these standards dictating to shops what the steps within a quality assurance program should be, asked shops to instead do a risk assessment of where your risks were based on quality, and then how you implemented a more tailored system to your own unique environment. And so we began implementing those new standards in December of 2025. So we did the risk assessment just before we did the standards. So the way the risk-based approach works is the GAO tells us that these objectives at a minimum we need to address in our risk assessment. And then we can add other ones as well if we want to, and then design a system to mitigate for these risks. So they include governance and leadership. And so that's sort of where audit sits within the organization and how much independence it has. Looking at the independence of the office, staff adherence to legal and ethical requirements, how we accept, initiate, and continue audits, how we perform on those audits, what resources we have available to conduct audits, and then also, and this one really doesn't apply very much in such a small shop, but in a larger one, how we communicate within our office about issues of quality management. So our just an overview of what our system of quality management looks like. We have annual independence and compliance statements that staff sign off on for each audit and annually, and if there are any changes. We have procedures for how we adopt our audit plan, minimum qualifications for staff to make sure that we qualified. We have continuing professional education to ensure that we stay up on new things in the field and are keeping up with what we need to know. We have policies and procedures for how we conduct audits. We index our reports to evidence, and when we have staff to do it, we have a secondary review. So what that means is for every one of our reports, each fact is linked to the evidence document, and then another person goes through and signs off and says like, yes, that conclusion links to the evidence that's cited there. We also have an engagement checklist that goes through our system of quality management that we do at the end of each audit. Then annually, I do this review of our whole quality management process. And so that's what I'm reporting to on now. And then every 3 years, we have an outside peer review that looks at our system of quality management.
When is that going to happen? 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago, so not this year, but 27. We'll do that again in 27. So here are the results. Everything was working as intended. So I went through all of our checklists and our systems were working as intended. One thing to note was that we're still having trouble always signing off on our independent statements. And I think that was especially true in the case that I found this year, which was the Sheriff's Office transition audit, which was when Aaron was leaving and I took it over. And so I think just with the change in staffing made that awkward. But there are other mitigating controls. Independence is also verified in the audit plan document. And in fact, we were both independent. So there's no, even though the form didn't get signed, we still were independent. This kind of just to give you an example of what the risk assessment looks like. There are 31 separate objectives that we have to do this for, so I couldn't include them all here. But this is one, which is the audit organization demonstrates a commitment to quality through a culture that exists throughout the audit organization. So inherent risk, I identified as high, that low quality reports will result in less credibility, and that's pretty important risk to me. We have controls. Our manual emphasizes the importance of performing quality engagements, professional ethics, values, and attitudes, and the responsibility of all personnel for quality control. And so then the residual risk after implementing those controls is low. So that's sort of how that works for each of those 31 separate objectives. There were 3 areas that I identified as a residual risk of high, and that I have to accept that we have to operate in a high risk environment in these areas. The first one is resource needs. That's resources are planned for, obtained, allocated, and assigned in a manner consistent with the audit organization's commitment to quality. This was impacted by the performance auditor position being reduced to half-time, which has been difficult to fill. And you'll see the impacts on the supervision and engagement review of why that has resulted in maintaining a high risk in that area. So supervision is defined in auditing standards as directing and guiding staff in performing work, complying with standards, staying informed about significant problems encountered during an audit, reviewing work performed before a report is issued, and providing on-the-job training. And so this is kind of how I think supervision looks at a minimum. So in a one-person shop, there really can't be supervision. You really need to rely on the experience of the person you've hired to be the auditor, because there's no one to supervise them. Even in a small shop, if there's a vacancy or leave, like a sick leave, you can fall back into that one person area for supervision. With 2 people or 1.5 people, there's a mid-range of risk. The 2 people can sort of perform those roles for each other, but you're really you're relying on two really highly qualified people. I think when the position was first cut to part-time and we're having trouble hiring, Whitney suggested like, well, maybe if you reduce the qualifications, it'll be easier to find someone. But this is why we can't really do that with such a small shop. We really need two highly qualified people. With 3 people, you can have a dedicated supervisor. So in this case, you have 2 people performing audits and 1 person who can supervise both of those audits. And then you can really meet the standard for supervision. Another area where we have high residual risk is engagement review. So engagement review is kind of a gold standard for auditing. And this is where there's a person who's not involved in the audit at all, doing those checking all facts and conclusions for sufficient and appropriate evidence. So that's where we do that reciprocally, where Aaron did an audit, I would check his, but if I did an audit, he would check mine. But there's no one who is not involved at all, because I would be supervising Aaron's audit and doing this review. In larger audit shops, there's a team who may be dedicated just to doing this. They don't even do audits. They just review other audits. And so this is how that looks, sort of similar to the last one. In a one-person shop, you'll do a self-review. So even though there's no one to check my work, I still make all those references in my reports, and I do a double check and sign off and say, like, do I really think this is true? Yes, I do really think this is true, but still it's just me. With 2 people, you can have someone doing, so I could make all those references and then someone else could check them. But because we'll always both be involved in the audit, because someone will be the supervisor in the audit and someone will be performing the audit. With 3 people, you can have truly independent review. So you have the supervisor, the auditor who does the work, and then have a bar between them, and the other person can do the review. That is it for our quality review process.
Anything on the recruitment for the HAP position?
Yep, so we'll be having some interviews next week.
Okay. Yeah. Candidates.
I'm a little reluctant to talk
Okay,
too much
yeah,
about
just
it because it's
curious.
a public meeting.
Okay. Just curious. Okay. That's good news.
Mhm.
Questions, comments from anyone? Okay. Really good information. Kind of all know it, but it'd be nice if we could have, hopefully that HAP position will come on board and help. So that would be good. Okay. Move on to the next item then. The survey.
So this is really asking for you all on a decision of whether or not you want to do an audit committee survey this year. So in the past, David had done this survey with audit committee every 3 years. Survey would help ensure a meaningful experience for committee members and improve committee effectiveness. It consisted of 46 questions scored on a Likert scale that talked about processes and procedures for the audit committee, understanding how the audit committee's understanding of organizational risks, the composition and quality of the committee, who are your fellow members, are they quality, how communication amongst committee members happens, oversight of the external auditors, the financial reporting, and then oversight of the internal audit functions. In 2023, so this is on a 5-point scale. can see that everything was fairly high. Some things above 4 on the scale. Audit oversight of the internal audit function was the lowest, but still pretty high. And this is just to show how those trends changed over time. Not really seeing a whole lot of movement in opinions of those factors. So this is these are some of the areas of what ratings on policies and procedures. So including are there policies for how reports go to the Board of Commissioners? Is there dedicated time for audit committees? Is there calendar? Member impact on the agenda? Are we having regular meetings? How do meeting materials look? This is where the changes between 2020 and 2023. So things that went up was dedicating time and resources to the committee. The thing that went down was the committee's input on the agenda. As far as risks, they were that the committee understands impacts to the quality of financial statements and also impacts significant to the county. Those didn't change very much. That's how they changed. The composition of quality of the committee, how do nominations happen? Do people meet qualifications? Do they attend? Are they independent? How does orientation work? How do people get information? Are there succession plans? So we saw a decrease in review charter annually and in continuing education, but an increase on succession planning. On communication, relating to setting the tone at the top for the organization, members having open lines of communication, relationships with management and auditors, receiving timely information. So a little small increase in cooperative relationship, decrease on timely information and visiting locations, site visits. This is oversight of the external auditors. These are the things that are involved in that. How those changed. So a little decrease in quality of financial statements, pretty much the same, in reviewing accounting policy. Decrease in experience of staff and decrease in how often you review internal controls. And then audit or oversight. So this understanding the coordination between internal and external auditors, that you review the audit charter, budget, staffing, selection and oversight of the external auditor, that you consider how non-audit services impacts auditor independence, that you would review any management representation letters coming from, that would come from external auditors. Not sure why that's in this section. But this is how, also, I wonder if I got these confused. So a decrease in oversight of external auditor fees, decrease on non-audit services, decrease on representation letters, and decrease on internal and external coordination. These are some of the comments that we got. Just gonna pop through. These are all in the meeting material if you want to look at them more closely. And then, so once I shared these results with you in 2023 and asked you to bring ideas to the group if you wanted to have any improvements in these areas. We didn't get, I think I got 4 responses to the survey. We ended up talking about it at 3 meetings. It took a lot of time for me to put together this, a lot of time for you. I did a lot of reminding people to respond to the survey. So I guess right now my question is, in 2026, do we want to do this survey? My impression the first time I went through was that it wasn't very helpful to the committee. But if you all are interested in continuing in this process, we can. Nick had raised another idea, which is that we could have kind of like a board, our committee retreat, where we would set aside a meeting, a separate meeting to talk about the committee's operations, and then have a discussion in person. One thing to understand about a retreat is that we're still a public body, so that would still be an open public meeting. That would be an option as well. So let me know. Discuss.
Well, just off the top, my thought is that you are a one-person shop, and you probably should be focusing on the core responsibility, which is to audit and clean up. So I would say with this, not eliminate it completely, at least suspend it until you have additional resources or makes sense to do the work and put the time in. Retreat, I think, is a good idea. That might be another way to skip the cat. Yeah, Kristen. Hi.
Hi. I mean, it's a really long survey, and I'm wondering how much value it brings. I do like the idea of having it be more of an open discussion, maybe something, it's a little bit of both, like a hybrid, maybe a much shorter survey and more open-ended of areas of concern or risk, or just so we can frame the retreat more. So maybe a briefer survey so we can kind of have areas that we want to talk into. But yeah, the 46, questions, and I'm not sure how much, with all that info, how much value it's adding. So I would like a hybrid maybe of both those things. We have a briefer, more open-ended questionnaire, and then maybe have the public meeting would be my idea.
Not having seen or completed that survey, I can't really speak to it, but I mean, I do understand long surveys. I not always a lot of fun, but seeing some of the candid comments, in the bubbles in the presentation, I appreciate that, and maybe it's a little bit more candid that in a response and through a survey rather than sitting around a table during a retreat. So I would second Kristen's hybrid method.
I think that's a great idea to support that, and also recognizing being cognizant of Elizabeth's time right now, and while not only not having the other person, but also going through the recruitment process takes a lot of time, and so I think anything we can do to protect your time for audits and for the work that you have to do, I think is positive. But I also think this is a good exercise of some sort, but if it could be condensed to take less of your time.
So constructing the survey itself, now obviously that has to be done.
We have all this data from this survey that David has been doing, so that we will, I guess, won't have the trends the same way going.
Is there a way that you could take Dave's and say, from your perspective, what are the 10 most out of the 46? What are the 10 most helpful ones? And instead of recreating it, just
it's really more up to you, honestly. What's helpful to you on the audit committee? Because I would really like to hear that from you all.
You have a copy of the 40?
The questions are all in the slideshows. Those, you're
Oh, yeah.
just rating those on a 4 factor and slides on a 4-5 scale.
Each. So something like reviews charter annually, succession plan, that actually was the question?
Yeah, do you
Oh,
review,
okay.
does the committee review the charter plan annually?
Add all those together, there's 46.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. These factors, each of these.
Where you've had significant change, the most significant change, I guess none of them really.
Yeah, and that's one of the, what I'm noting is that I'm not sure the committee was really ever using this information. This was just a practice we were going through. And so it really is, it speaks to, how is this something you want to do as a committee?
It's actually had over the last 3 years.
For example, one of the things that went down a lot was site visits. So after this survey, we worked to organize some site visits, and we went to community justice. Lee did a site visit for us over at facilities. Nobody was able to attend these, so pretty much Lee and Daryl. It was a bit embarrassing when we were at community justice and organized a tour, and then nobody wanted to go on the tour, even though they had set aside time to show us around. So that's an example of something that seemed like it didn't really have value to the committee.
Other examples? Other.
I don't. We did talk a little bit more about internal controls, I suppose, but a lot of them were things that there really wasn't a whole lot of change. Oh, the charter. So we did have a charter before. So we did we did put a charter in place. So that's something we did. We did try to do a little bit more focus on continuing education. But that's hard to balance with the time we need to spend on audits.
Yeah.
Going to visiting locations. Changes weren't very big. This again, a reviewing of internal controls.
Just kind of the core mission, right?
So oversight of audit, I think this one scored lower, and maybe it would change based on when the survey fell in actually doing the selection of the external auditors, because that's a time when you'll have more input on on fees, and otherwise I guess I could share with you more on there if you're interested in that.
Okay, all right.
Any idea on timing of this, if people are interested in doing a survey or?
Well, I would think you might want to wait until you have, until you at least see how the recruitment goes and see if you get someone else on board to help out. I think it's probably difficult enough for you just to keep up with that information.
So maybe we can revisit this conversation again, maybe December. Would that make sense?
Yeah, that's. It's just survey.
Yeah, when does the survey normally come out?
Every 3 years, right?
Yeah, so last time I issued it in September.
So it'll be this September if we stayed on schedule.
That was something David had put off. So here, do this.
Do we need more direction on that?
No, I'll just come back in December and ask you all where you think you want to go with it.
Okay, anything else? Or we move on to the next item? All right. Budget proposed 2027.
So every year, share our budget with you before it gets finalized, just in case you have any comments on it. Not a whole lot of difference usually. Most of our expenses are in personnel, and those just pretty much change year over year based on sort of our standard county personnel processes. It does go up a bit more this year than we've seen in past years. That's because the county did a wage equity study and increased salaries for staff based on looking at peer comps both locally in Oregon and across the nation. So that's what that is. The materials and services is going down a little bit. One thing to note is that doesn't include internal service fund charges because those aren't ready to be included yet. But that also is just a standard formula based on staffing or square footage, office square footage, or how many computers you have, or things like that. The reason this is going down is that last year it had budgeted some funds for AI software, and now the county has an enterprise AI solution. So that gets wrapped into internal service funds instead of into this. And I think it's also quite a bit cheaper than what I was looking at. If you are curious, this is what it looks like. And so I kept most things the same as they were last year. I increased it last year due to some expectations of inflation, and I think I don't need to increase it this year. I'm including program expense on there. That is where we budget for our peer reviews, and that will not take place in the next fiscal year. So that's not budgeted. That's a sort of placeholder. And then budget week is May 12th through 14th. So if you're interested in participating in that, that's when that is. And right now, administration is scheduled for May 12th at 10:40, and audit is a part of the administration.
That's pretty flat. Any questions about the budget? I don't have any. Anyone else? All right. On. Update from Auditor Performance Review Subcommittee. That is myself, Joe Healy, and Phil Anderson. I think the only update is we're in the process of setting up a meeting between subcommittee and department heads just to kind of get some input about the program. And we're tentatively have those dates scheduled for the 10th of March. Phil is unavailable until then, and then we have a very tight window because I am leaving on about the 17th of March. I'd be available by Zoom. Southern California. Obviously want to get the auditor evaluation done on time this year, and everybody be really efficient than we have been. So that's it on that. Unless there's any questions, or Joe wants to add anything if Joe's up there. You'll have to look at it and see his name. Okay. Other discussion items, administrative update.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to provide some updates. I've shared the same message with the Budget Committee, the board at the retreat, and I think at least one other venue. But we are in this period of some pretty significant transitions in the county. Beginning last summer, when we hired a new Human Resources Director, Health Services Director, and Sheriff. The board appointed a new sheriff. We are now in the process, and Eric just mentioned that we had a new Fair and Expo Director start this week. And next week, we're conducting final round interviews for a solid waste director. So, and then the assessors also announced that he will not seek re-election and will retire at the end of this term. So there's a lot of leadership transitions we're having in the county. In addition to that, this is the year that we have the elections to move from 3 commissioners to 5. The board is putting on the ballot in November district maps for voters to weigh in on. There are other significant positions in the county as well. We're hiring a new building official. Our building official retired. We have a position for a county forester. We're going to rename that position. But both very important positions to the county for a lot of reasons. And we're also moving natural resources, which is where the county forester and other staff are based from an independent division program, reports to admin, and based in the road department to the community development department. So that's happening in fairly short order. So just a lot of organizational change happening now. At the same time, we're in the short legislative session, which is where Commissioner Adair is this afternoon. She's testifying on bills this afternoon. The commissioners are all really, really engaged, as there's a lot of legislation that can impact the county, mostly to our benefit, but certainly not all. So that's requiring a lot of resources this month. And we're also beginning the budget preparation process. It's, as we look at over the last several years, we've talked about the increasing costs of everything, the increasing costs of labor and materials and supplies and inflation and all of those. Well, this year we're continuing to experience those more with the wage, with the market analysis, maybe less so with the inflationary factors. But we're also seeing, at the same time, we're seeing significantly reduced funding from state and federal partners. So it's going to make for some very difficult decisions during the budget process this year. And we're beginning that process right now. So a lot happening. We're all highly engaged on many, many fronts with organizational change, budget prep, short legislative session. And that's just a snapshot of it. Eric, Whitney, anything to add?
And Eric already covered, the new Fair and Expo hire, which he's
so excited. I couldn't wait for it.
Eric, to be honest, I was hoping you'd be spilling the beans on the concert announcements at the same time. No such luck.
No.
Then we get to kill you.
Yeah. Watched one of the map meetings on Zoom. It was really interesting. A lot of interesting discussion.
Yeah.
It's quite a process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, anything else? Updates, any questions, or while you have Nick or Whitney, Eric here? Anyone? No? Okay. That's it. That's the last item we have. Anything else? Speak now or forever hold your peace before we adjourn. All right, we'll adjourn at 2:10. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Using leading this 17.